Welcome you all to this session. And once again, we are after a couple of sessions that we have already taken on Farmers Bill and then US presidential election. This is the third session of the series that we are calling about GWPI module. As you know, you hardly get any time to prepare for GDPI once the result is out. And as you see, SPGen already gave you the call today. So it is at high time that you have to be very, very serious about your GWPI preparation. Don't wait for another 15 days when the CAT result will come and then you will start preparing. And trust me, in 15 days, you can spend good 30-40 hours amount of time on your GWPI preparation, which will definitely add on and make you ahead of your competitor when you will be facing the interview. As we know, like even the colleges like Symbiosis and others, generally, Nasim Onji generally takes the interview at the end of January and first week of February. So trust me, you are not going to get much time to do and prepare for that. And trust me, this year was an eventful year where a lot of things happened, even during the pandemic, where we are seeing pandemic will slow down the things. But yeah, there's a lot of activity that has been happened. We have planned a series of sessions for you. Till that, yes, we decided hardly 1 or 2 sessions a week. After that, of course, we will be increasing the frequency to 3 sessions a week. And after CAT, we'll surely be going to make it 4 to 5 days a week session for you, right? So without wasting any minute now, as already people join, we will be today discussing National Education Policy 2020. Of course, I have two amazing people with me in the session today, Vishal sir and Saurabh sir. So both of them are definitely going to give you a lot of insight about that particular thing. But before I start with the session, I really wanted to know how many of you have read something about new education policy, that they have a basic framework understanding that what this policy is all about, how are the things. Can I get I request you to mute yourself, please. Just a sec, sorry. I'm muting all of you, and then
yeah,
Vishal sir, Saurabh sir, you have a permission.
Ankita, you are wanting to speak. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry. So, guys, I was just asking if you know about new education policy and you have read something about that. I'm sure you must have read it in the newspaper, heard something on the news channels. Have you done some research, some basic understanding of that? How many of you are not clear about this? Because accordingly, we have to start with the session, right? If you already know about this, we can skip that particular part and we can definitely go about the future and what is a way forward to NEP. But if you're not aware about the brief history even, then we have to start with the history of this and then we'll move ahead.
Ankita, somebody was wanting to speak. Ankita, Kavisha, you were saying something?
We will open the things for Q&A. आप एक notebook अपने पास रखो, जो भी questions आपको आते हैं, you can note it down or you can send it in the chat. At the end of the session, we'll surely be allowing you to speak and then we'll surely be discussing all your queries and doubts. Yeah, so guys, I am waiting for
start karte hain. So the first major, question arises that, what is the need of a policy like new education, new national education policy? Like, what is the need of a policy framework? Why do you need a policy, Darpan sir?
Yes. So, okay, first and foremost thing is that the education system that we were following, first change that has happened in the, first policy came in by Indira Gandhi in 1968. And after 1968, Rajiv Gandhi, when he was the Prime Minister of India, that policy came in 1986, which has been modified. And that is the time, like, Rajiv Gandhi also did. that they made this education ministry a human resource department, HRD ministry. And Narasimha Rao, if I remember it correctly, was the first HRD minister of this country. In 1992, when PV Narasimha Rao became the prime minister, again, he has done the amendments into the policy that has been designed in 1986. This is the major thing happened in terms of education in India. After that, there one more change that has happened in year 2009, where they made right to education is a fundamental right, where the free education and compulsory education must be given to all the students or all the kids of age 6 to 14 years. Now, in 70 years or over 70 years of independence, education was never been a agenda or in the political vote getting के लिए बहुत important एक मुद्दा नहीं था, and that is one reason no one has given much importance of that to that particular thing. But if you see the manifesto of BJP government of 2014, the new education policy was the very, very important thing, that they have mentioned. And making of this policy is not an overnight game, right? Somebody has decided yesterday we have to frame some policy and do that. No. 2015, when Smriti Irani was our HRD minister, that is the time, they have set up one committee. And that committee has given a recommendation for 1 year, but then it could not happen. Then another committee of 9 members in the chairmanship of Kasturi Rangan, that again given is final draft in 2019. And when they had given the draft, then they have asked for the suggestion to the various people, and they said over 1 lakh suggestion came for the changes in the education policy. Now understand that India was a very different country some 20 years back. It was a very different country or 30 years back. If you see the India, like this one India, one independent India you see from 1947 to 1990, another India you see from 1990 to 2000, another India you see from 2000 to 2008-9, when there was a global subprime crisis, and then you see a new India where you see and training the millennial kids who born. So it was very, very important that we have to overhaul the education system of this country, because it is now very, very important for all of us to realize the importance of giving the quality education, not only the education. When you see, you made it right to education in 2009, it was only about giving education. But right now, the purpose behind this particular policy is giving the quality education, because I'm sure of lately you are hearing and reading in the various newspaper that a big chunk of Indian population is not only not able to even do a basic job and basic performance. That there's a report in Economic Times I have read, they said over 80% of Indian engineers are not employable. So why? There are certainly a big flaws in the existing system, and to deal with these kind of system, they have actually framed that policy work.
Right.
And that,
I think Darpan sir, I think Darpan sir made a very, very important point there, right? The RTE, right to education, was all about giving education, right? It was basically targeting, the numerical values, right? That this much percentage of our population is getting education, this much of our population is attending schools, right? Especially the midday meal schemes, etc. They were basically targeting to, get the students to the school. But probably what was missing, and I'm thinking probably Vishal sir would like to add here. Nobody was very much keen on the quality of education being imparted. ठीक है कि students तो आ गए, midday meal scheme दिया आपने, आप वो students को ले आए स्कूल के अंदर, but स्कूल के अंदर पढ़ाने वाला टीचर कैसा है, उस टीचर के skills कैसे हैं, adequate teacher to student ratio maintain हो रहा है या नहीं हो रहा है. I think these things were primarily missing, right? Vishal sir, any comments here?
No, absolutely. I think you're right, Darpanji, Saurabhji. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I think taking on from what Darpanji was talking about, I just have one or two slides that I could possibly show you.
Sure, go ahead, let's go.
And then we could maybe take this discussion further. So my idea was that it ties up very well with what Darpanji was talking about. So some idea about the need, why is there a need for a new education policy, which has come for 34 years down the line, which everybody talks about. 1986 was the last education policy, and now it's the next. Remember, this policy has been in conversation or discussion almost 1.5 to 2 years. Right, so the core philosophy of the new education policy is something that we are all kind of aware of. Somewhere in the system, you as students, we as administrators, faculty, have been quite concerned about, what is it that we are looking at in terms of output? What is it that we're looking at in terms of employability? What is it that we're looking at in terms of, are we able to also ensure a certain basic level of education? When I use the term education, I use it quite loosely, right? So one of the core philosophies, and of course, this is where it kind of builds away from what I would call as the older policies. So absolutely, the right to education, yes, right? Everybody has the right to education. But if you don't have the structures, if you don't have the processes, if you don't necessarily have the thought, and what is it that we want our future students to become, then automatically we wouldn't know where to go. So we would have a horse, we would have the fact that we would like to travel this far, but we wouldn't know where to go, and we wouldn't necessarily know how to go. So this particular policy kind of builds a lot of this together. And of course, one of the fundamental things that this policy looks at is the fostering of certain capabilities for each student. Right? Every student is different. You must have come across, many times this joke wherein, a snake, an elephant, a monkey, a horse, everybody is standing, and one of the teachers is telling them to go climb the tree. And automatically that meant that obviously the elephant would never be able to climb the tree, right? The snake would easily climb the tree, monkey would easily climb the tree, the others would have a big problem, right? So to a certain extent, what is it that we're doing with our education system? Are we being able to enable certain characteristics, certain strengths, to develop? Are we using the same yardstick for everyone, right? So some people might be greatly talented, people might have certain skills, but essentially we're trying to take them through the same routine, which doesn't make any sense. And of course, that also contributes to the employability or the lack of it, right? बहुत हद तक आपने सुना होगा कि लोग बोलते रहते हैं, डॉक्टर नारायण मूर्ति ने बोला है, सबने बोला है, 80%, 90% people are not employable. Of course, there are big reasons for it. So the education policy, to a certain extent, builds upon, right? So obviously, you first needed a right to education. Thereafter, you needed the thought around how to actually go about it, right? Of course, this policy looks at certain foundational literacy, right? The fact is, do we have certain language capabilities? Do we have certain math capabilities? Yes, that'd be important. So very quickly, I'll just list out what could be the reasons. Like flexibility important. I kept on mentioning this whole idea that fundamentally speaking, everybody goes through engineering, everybody does a BTech, everybody does medical, everybody does law, whatever. But fundamentally, what did a student always want to do? Right? That's something that now this policy, as we're evolving, enables that to happen. Okay. Multidisciplinarity, that's something that is completely at the core of the new education policy. The fact that when you start getting into more detail of the policy, so chahe wo, this conversation about 3-year degrees hongi or 4-year degrees hongi, uske baad master's level aapka 1 saal ka hoga, 2 saal ka hoga. The fact that upskilling education will be about 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, iska kya matlab hai? Iska kya maine hai? Aap kya karenge? Right? A lot of these things is now spelled out, right? So it builds up on our own ambition, right? Yes, that we would like almost all of our students to be educated. We would like the gross enrollment ratio to go up to 50%, by 2035. Right, which means the number of students who are, out of the total higher education capable, population, how many of them are finally, going into university or college, right? Ye sab jo hai, these are now kind of tenets. These are now engraved into our policies. एक और चीज ये है कि बहुत हद तक जो employability element है, placeability element है, right? If you notice, हम बहुत सारे exams देते थे, मेरे time में जब मैंने BTech किया, राइट हम लोग एग्जाम दे के अपनी टपरी पे जाते थे, एक साथ डिस्कस करते थे, आपने कितना लिखा, आपने कितना किलो लिखा, उसने कितना किलो लिखा, राइट कोई बोलता था 50 ग्राम लिखा, कोई बोलता था 2 kg लिखा. So automatically this idea was that the more you wrote, the more the probability of doing rather well. But the fact is, did that ever help you create conceptual understanding? Did that ever help you create a depth? This particular policy, and of course the fact that we need to be able to reskill, upskill, skill our population, is now also being addressed by this particular policy as well. Of course, the biggest thing here is also the extensive use of technology. So far it was quite random, so far it was quite all over the place, right? कुछ आपने देखे होंगे बहुत सारे WhatsApp पे videos, TikTok के videos, right? The fact that kitna effort deke, kitne teachers apne own capacities, apne own resources deke aajkal COVID times mein padha rahe hain, right? Of course now the policy will be able to enable a lot more better blended models, online learning models, and face-to-face models as well, right? And of course aap jaise bata rahe the Saurabh ji, right? Teachers and faculty will be at the heart of the learning process. चाहे हम जितनी भी policies बनाए, राइट चाहे हम जितनी भी पॉलिसीज बनाएं, फंडामेंटली अगर वो टीचर चेंज नहीं होता, अगर वो फैकल्टी चेंज नहीं होता, अगर उसकी कैपेबिलिटीज एनहांस या मॉडर्नाइज नहीं होती, right, no matter what we create, we'll never be able to implement it. So automatically this particular policy is also at the heart of the learning process. How do you evolve these faculties? How do you make sure that they're trained very well, which then enable this policy to be implemented in the right manner? So fundamentally, I kind of agree with a lot of the aspects that you were talking about: the right to education, fundamental changes that are required, making use of technology, ensuring that there is a certain kind of focus on the learning outcomes, on the course outcomes, a focus on what is it that a student would like to do, rather than us pushing them into a particular area simply because usi se aapko aage jaake naukri milegi, right? So it's going much beyond that now.
Right. To just add to what Vishal was talking about, I think yesterday I was reading an article about the merging of the skills. So it talked about a very famous institution in the world called MIT, right? Massachusetts Institute of Technology, right? Ab naam se to lagta hai MIT is all about technology, engineering, and all those things, but you'll be surprised to know that MIT has a very strong arts and culture stream also. MIT has a very strong arts and culture stream also.
Absolutely.
Right? Why is that MIT is trying to foster and it's trying to build a very strong arts and culture stream into the campus curriculum? The reason is this, that the explanation was this, that if a civil engineer, right, is building a dam, right, and he has studied, let's say, the demographics and the population and peoples and sociology, etc., he'll always take into consideration while designing the project, right, कि कितना human displacement होगा, क्या उसके लिए वायबल है, कितना मैं कम कर सकता हूं, मैं क्या इसमें आइडियाज इंकॉर्पोरेट कर सकता हूं एट द ड्राइंग लेवल इटसेल्फ. नहीं तो इंडिया में जैसा होता है, we do, I think last time I was visiting the Tehri Dam. Now Tehri Dam in Uttarakhand is a very controversial dam project. इस पे बड़े प्रोटेस्ट हुए, बड़े प्रॉब्लम्स हुई और ये डैम बहुत धीरे धीरे करके फाइनली बना, राइट? द टिहरी डैम इन उत्तराखंड, and a large amount of population was displaced. पर मुझे लगता है कि probably the concept that MIT is talking about actually makes sense. यदि एक सिविल इंजीनियर को स्ट्रक्चरल डिजाइन के समय पता लग जाए कि भैया मेरे को इन चीजों का भी इंपॉर्टेंस देखना है, आई एम नॉट गोइंग टू जस्ट टॉक अबाउट द टेक्निकल फिजिबिलिटी ऑफ द डैम की रिजर्वायर एरिया कितना बनेगा, कितना मैं इरिगेशन सप्लाई करूंगा, कितना पावर प्रोड्यूस करूंगा. आई विल आल्सो हैव टू लुक इनटू द सोसाइटल इंपैक्ट, द सोशियोलॉजिकल इंपैक्ट. तो ये आई थिंक काफी वाइटल है, right?
No, absolutely. I think it's very vital because at the end of the day, look at how our cities are designed and look at how, let's say, some of the other cities and maybe in certain western parts of the world is designed. There's a lot of alignment between society, socioeconomic conditions, what is it that city requires, the right environment, the right quality of life that gets integrated into the design. And automatically आप अगर देखेंगे, and the new education policy में भी एक definite वो prescription है कि IITs will not be now going forward about teaching BTech only. right? They will incorporate, because at the end of the day, new education policy says, "Jo bhi seat of learning hogi," and MIT is a seat of learning, right? And you have to kind of integrate a lot of learning together. एक तो आपको flexible structures देने हैं, because बच्चा जो है, he would like to study not only the history but also the science behind it, right? आप अगर देखेंगे MBA and all, a lot of the students here today who are listening to us, even if you look at the MBA of the future, the MBA of the future will be the right balance between the domain knowledge, चाहे वो marketing करना चाहते हो, चाहे वो finance करना चाहते हो, चाहे वो data sciences, right? So whole concept of analytics put together. But at the same time, this whole idea of the liberal orientation, वो भी काफी important रहेगा कि देखिए fundamentally आप अगर automation करेंगे as a leader of let's say a company, a business leader, if you are going to automate, you have to remember that automation would lead to certain skilling requirements, but would also lead to certain, let's say, right sizing, would lead to certain job losses. How do you manage all of this together? Right. So fundamentally, even the MBA is going on to this whole platform of the fusion of three things. One is the liberal, sciences. The other is the data sciences, and the third, of course, is your domain knowledge. चाहे वो marketing बोले, चाहे वो finance बोले, चाहे वो HR बोले. You're absolutely right. I think fundamentally an engineer really needs to know. आपको अगर याद होगा, हमने जब let's say geography पढ़ी थी school में, right? हमें स्कूल में टेस्ट में क्या टेस्ट होता था? I remember the other day जब I was thinking about the new education policy. हमें टेस्ट में क्या बोला जाता था? आप ये पिन पॉइंट करें कि ब्रह्मपुत्र कहाँ पे है, कावेरी कहाँ पे है, मैप पे, और उसी हिसाब से आपको मार्क्स मिलते थे, right? वर्ल्ड के रिवर्स भी, वोल्गा कहाँ है, सीन कहाँ है, गैंजेस कहाँ है. But the fact is that important? Is that more important than the fact that what if, let's say, a great superpower or, some country builds a dam over Brahmaputra, how will that impact the ecological, life in a certain region? And what do you do to ensure that minimizes the impact? So fundamentally, we're, with the new education policy, at least in spirit, at least in thought, at least from a conceptual perspective, definitely we're going, in the right direction. IITs bhi aage aise padhaenge. That's fundamentally absolutely important. So it's a good thing. Having said that, how do the IITs develop, right, into being able to teach a lot of all this? वो बहुत important रहेगा, right? एक तो BTech orientation है, technology orientation है, aeronautical orientation है. Some of that, usko aage jaake, how do you build in multidisciplinarity is going to be a big challenge.
And one very interesting fact that has been added to this, that they are not only talking about, improving the existing university, etc., but they had a plan by 2040, 3.5 crore more seats that they will be increasing in terms of college. And they are saying ki multidisciplinary and research center in every district possible by 2040. A big vision, but a very welcome vision if that will happen. Definitely the goal that we have decided to become a top 3 global economy by 2050, 2060, we'll surely and certainly be able to achieve that. And of course, that required, lot of investment and money from the side of the government, when they are saying that we are going to invest 6% of our GDP into this. And that is going to be a huge amount. Right now, when you see, we are not investing much of the money, and our education budget is quite less. And whatever the budget is, we are not even able to spend even that much. On the contrary, some people were saying that we have taken this particular education system from, the places like USA or something from the Europe. But trust me, like if they have certain model which are actually good, and today, when you see a country like USA, you see a country like Israel, you see a country like China, trust me, they are working a lot in terms of making people to earn their self-livelihood, what we call, our Prime Minister also says, Atmanirbhar Bharat. So this education will make you more skilled, rather just make you to pass certain examination and acquire a lot many of degrees. So I believe, like, a big challenge, but a very welcome thing. That change was needed much before, but now it is there. And I will surely be able to feel that this will change a lot of things. Saurabh sir, if I would like to ask you certain things like, Delhi University once, tried a 4-year graduation. And when you see like in this also, of course, there are 3 major elements of this new education policy: school level education, as we can see in the slide, and then the language, and third is the higher education. So how do you believe like the 4-year education, especially courses like BA, BCom, BSc, will that work?
Okay, I think this 4-year graduation system is basically that is what we are trying to take up from Europe and US, right? And because Europe and US, they do have a 4-year graduation system. And that is what we want to take up from Europe, because a lot of Indian students, since I have a lot of students who enroll with me and want to go out of India for higher education, right? So they do face a drawback that they have a 3-year graduation, right? So a lot of universities are actually not okay with a 3-year graduation system, although that is also changing here and there. But yeah, some of the students, Indian students, were otherwise all competent and qualified, just because of the fact that they don't have a 4-year graduation. They are not eligible to apply for select courses across the world. So I think that is one of the reasons why we are contemplating a 4-year graduation course. Now, as far as Delhi University experiment was concerned, yeah, the Delhi University tried to do this experiment by bringing in a 4-year graduation program into BA and BCom, etc. And it did meet with certain success, but overall the time duration was very less to measure the impact. And I think that the scale also was very less to measure, an effective impact. मतलब मुझे लगता है कि ऐसी पॉलिसीज यदि आप इंप्लीमेंट करते हो तो it takes at least 3-4 years to measure the outcome. Because let us see, a student who starts with a 4-year BBA course, right, versus a student who starts with a 3-year BBA course, तो हमको 4 साल तो चाहिए ना उसको इवेलुएट करने के लिए कि भाई जो 4 साल वाला था उसने क्या अचीव किया, और जिसने 3 साल का करिकुलम पढ़ा उसने क्या अचीव किया. तो जब तक 4 साल नहीं मिलेंगे, हम मतलब इवेलुएट कैसे करेंगे, मेजर कैसे करेंगे किसी भी चीज को. So I think that was the drawback, that it was taken away very quickly. मतलब introduce किया, देखा नहीं चल रहा है, resistance आया, and they took it away. No, I don't think that was a very good experiment. मुझे लगता है कि ऐसे experiments आपको कम से कम 4-5 साल तक run करके देखने पड़ेंगे. Otherwise, it's not possible.
Do you see
Vishal
this
sir, go ahead.
framework will be able to deal with this?
So I think when it was designed by by Professor Dinesh Singh, who was the Vice Chancellor of the university at that time, I think yes, the idea was definitely providing a window, making students more research orientated, ensuring that this kind of is able to match up to a lot of the US requirements per se. But I think by and large, one of the big reasons why it did not necessarily do very well was because I think, beyond the academic circles, beyond, let's say, some of the, people supporting it at the university level, there was still not a buy-in from the, let's say, the political establishment, right? And fundamentally, in many quarters, including in India, I think there has to be a buy-in from all quarters. Right, so it's quite possible that maybe it was still in the making. Maybe people felt that नहीं अभी तक ये पूरी तरह completely अच्छी तरह implement नहीं हो पाएगा, या उसके thought process का change है, या even political will. Right, so it's a combination of various things, and automatically this was not necessarily successful. But in thought, it actually was very, very useful. अब क्या है कि अब ये जो कॉन्सेप्ट है ऑफ 4-year undergrad degrees, उसको काफी चेंज के हिसाब से लाया गया है, राइट? सो व्हाट इज गोइंग टू हैपन नाउ इज दैट आपकी, देखिए, आप अगर 3 साल की डिग्री करना चाहते हैं, आप 3 साल की डिग्री कर सकते हैं, ऐसी बात नहीं है कि नहीं होगा आपका, राइट? 4th ईयर को रिसर्च बेस्ड डिग्री माना जाएगा. Right, so first, and essentially, I don't know how this is going to get implemented, how this will get received, but the fact is that अगर आप 1 साल भी करते हैं, चाहे वो BA हो गया, BSc हो गया, या जनरल डिग्रीज जो भी हो गई, 1 साल के बाद भी आप इसको छोड़ के कुछ और कर सकते हैं, अपनी फैमिली बिजनेस में जा सकते हैं, आपके अपना एक स्टार्टअप कर सकते हैं, एंड मे बी आफ्टर 2-3 years, मे बी आपका अगर फाइनेंशियल कंडीशन ठीक ना हो, you can leave or exit after year 1 and get a certificate as well. Okay, and then of course you can continue if you want, but if you can come back later, because एक academic credit bank रहेगा, right? So there'll be an academic credit bank which will ensure that आपकी जितनी भी पढ़ाई होती है, right, चाहे वो आप 1 साल करते हैं, मेरे काफी स्टूडेंट्स अंडरग्रेड लेवल पे जो है, उनमें से एक था जिसने 2 साल किया और उसने बोला कि देखिए, I really want to follow my first love. My first love is music. I want to create a studio. I want to create music. Right? मेरे लिए I don't want to necessarily do something like this. मैं 2 साल पढ़ लिया, मैं 3-4 साल बाद एक अपना म्यूजिक लेबल एस्टेब्लिश करके या अपना म्यूजिक एल्बम्स बना के मैं उसके बाद आ जाऊंगा वापस, नो प्रॉब्लम. बट उसको कोई प्रोविजन नहीं है अभी मेरे पास, कोई ऐसा प्रोविजन नहीं है कि मैं उसको क्रेडिट्स दे दूं, उसको एक डिप्लोमा दे दूं. सो अब क्या होगा कि ईयर 2 में अगर आप ईयर 2 कंप्लीट कर लेते हैं और उसके बाद फॉर सम रीजन आप निकल पड़ते हैं या चले जाते हैं, देन यू गेट अ डिप्लोमा, राइट, बिकॉज बेस्ड ऑन सर्टेन क्रेडिट्स. ईयर 3 में यू कैन गेट अ डिग्री, राइट, एंड यू कैन मूव ऑन, right? But remember, year 3 में अगर आप exit करते हैं with a degree, in that case, if you want to do a master's, then you will have to do a master's of 2 years. And this is where the beauty and the differentiation is, right? Earlier, the undergraduate 4-year program was a standalone program. It was designed. It wasn't integrated to the rest of your education, right? So now it's getting integrated to the rest of your education, which kind of now starts making more sense. अगर आप 4 साल की undergraduate degree करते हैं, later on, you might just have to do a 1-year master's because that will teach you the practicality, that will teach you a lot of the experiential stuff, that will teach you project-based learning stuff. Because आपने जो 1 साल extra दिया है UG को, right, उसमें आपने research capability बढ़ाई है. देखिए, research capability अगर आप बढ़ाते हैं, your ability to reflect, your ability to create depth, your ability to analyze काफी हद तक develop होता है. That's one of the big reasons why they want to include a research component. आपने अगर 3 साल किया है, वो क्रेडिट बैंक में आपने क्रेडिट accumulate कर ली है, and after about 5-7 years you want to then do a master's, obviously you'll have to do a 2-year master's rather than a 1-year master's. But if you're doing a 4-year undergraduate degree, your master's will be 1 year. Now look at what's happening here. It's kind of aligning globally. So if you look at UK's got 1-year master's, right? So it's aligning with that kind of an approach. It's also aligning, let's say, with the US requirements. So there's a lot of thought behind a lot of the policies. And I guess that's one of the big reasons why it's taken such a long time for it to get actually, implemented. Having said that, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, right? ये कैसे implement होगा, कैसे, इसको हम warm up होंगे, क्या वो capacities हैं कि नहीं to be able to completely implement this, वो सब only time will tell.
Right.
So Darpan ji, what are your thoughts on the 4-year degree? Do you think it'll be successful in India? I think he's having.
Okay. So I think we can move ahead. Like, that's a wonderful point. Like, so it's either going to be a 4+1 or a 3+2 kind of a thing, which
Yes.
I think makes a choice available to the student. Like, which option do you want to take? Like, you want to take a 4+1 or you want to take a 3+2? That's an option available. And it's like eventually that the onus is now on the student, right?
Mm-hmm.
And probably the family. Unfortunately, what I see in India, right, that the graduation level decisions, right, are taken by the family, right? So it's the father, mother, or probably the son or daughter. They combined take the decision. Whereas in the United States and the West, it's the other way around. It's the other way around. It's like after school, the parents are nowhere in the decision making hierarchy, right? So it's about the student decides whether I want to pursue arts or, let's say, history, or let's say music, or law, or anything of that sort, right? And then it's your decision entirely. However, in India, that's going to be a combined decision of the family, right? So I think that gives a good you can say option to the student.
Yeah.
Right. And somebody raised a question which says like 2 years masters would be better. हमें नहीं पता. हमें नहीं पता। फ्रैंकली स्पीकिंग अभी बैठ के हम नहीं कह सकते ये चीज, राइट, कि क्या बेहतर होगा। जैसा कि मैंने बोला, जैसा ये चीज है ना जी, दिस इज व्हाट यू नीड टू स्पीक इन योर पर्सनल इंटरव्यूज आल्सो स्टूडेंट्स, कि सर राइट नाउ आई डोंट थिंक वी आर इन अ पोजीशन टू कमेंट व्हिच वन वुड बी बेटर और नॉट, but it looks like both have their pros and cons, and we already experienced the 3+2 system, and we are yet to experience a 4+1 system in place in India, so that would take a minimum 5 years, 5 साल लगेंगे उसमें. So we'll come to know what is better only after probably 5 years, when the one batch has already passed through that particular process. उसके पहले कहना बहुत मुश्किल होगा. For example, I'll tell you an example now. Now this is very important because examples are critical in your answers. Keep that in mind, all the students, right? जब तक आप GDs में, VAT में और इंटरव्यूज में एग्जाम्पल्स नहीं दोगे, आपकी बात को कोई भी समझ नहीं पाएगा. To make your point understandable, you need to support with examples, right? Now for example, जब हमारे IIM थे, ठीक है, they were all doing a 2-year MBA program taken from the American corporates, right? Because IIM Ahmedabad was established with American ideology and aid. IIM Calcutta was established in American ideology and aid. तो हम basically follow तो कर रहे थे American education system को. But then IIM Indore took a foray, right? Made a foray, and they started something like a 5-year integrated program in management, IPM, right? अब ये IPM Indore अकेले चला रहा था. Rest of the IIMs did not bother to launch. But then seeing the success rate of the students, right? अब वो 5 साल लगा ना उन बच्चों को. It took 5 years for those students who went into an IIM after +2 to come out of IIM and get into the corporate world. तो 5 साल का gestation period था. It was a gestation period of 5 years before we could comment कि कोर्स कितना अच्छा है या नहीं है. But when the industry saw the output, ठीक है, इंडस्ट्री ने जब आउटपुट देखा तो दे saw that probably a 2-year MBA से बेटर है ये बच्चे, है ना. These kids are better than a 2-year MBA product because वो 3 साल उन्होंने IIM में पढ़ाई की है, उसके बाद 2 साल का MBA कोर्स भी किया है. So they found that these kids are better, right? In terms of employability, in terms of skill sets, in terms of technology, in terms of language skills, everything. तो वो काफी फर्क पड़ा उस चीज का. तो IIM रोहतक ने शुरू कर दिया, और उसके बाद अब IIM रांची ने अनाउंस कर दिया है, IIM बोध गया ने अनाउंस कर दिया है. सो मुझे लगता है अगले साल तक, जो मेरी गट फीलिंग है इनटू दिस इंडस्ट्री फॉर द 20 years that I am, I think most of the new IIMs would start these programs. वो तो IPM के प्रोग्राम शुरू करेंगे ही करेंगे. So I think सबसे बड़ी फैक्टर तुम ये देखोगे जो चेंज हो गया, कि +2 के बाद लोग सोचते थे यार MBA करना है, पहले ग्रेजुएशन कर लो फिर MBA करो. अब शायद ये थॉट प्रोसेस आ जाएगी कि 12th के बाद ही MBA करना है, ठीक है, वी गो फॉर एन इंटीग्रेटेड प्रोग्राम. वही खत्म करेंगे ना, गेम वही खत्म हो जाएगा.
और वहां पे भी MBA प्रोग्राम में भी काफी कुछ आपको पढ़ाया जाएगा. It's about policies, it's about society, it's about civilizations, because this whole idea that काफी हद तक हम जो सीखते हैं वो आइसोलेशन में सीखते हैं, without a context to what we are studying. And I think ये वो 5-year window अगर होगा, उसमें काफी कुछ ऐसी चीजें आप कर पाओगे जिसमें it will be a lot of multiple disciplines, flexibility of the curriculum. Look at Stanford for that matter. The Stanford first year undergrad is free for, you can do whatever you want to do, right? You can explore the various courses, then get an idea about what is it that you like to do. So automatically ये काफी हद तक, हमारे universities में भी आ जाएगा in a few years. Of course, implementation, how we do it, a lot of these things will matter a great deal.
One more thing I would like to ask, sir, if you can throw some light on that now India is also allowing the universities who are in top ranking in the world to come and, start their extension centers or their establishment in India as well. How do you see that for the future of Indian education system?
So I think it's a kind of welcome move in a way. It's been in the planning for a while. पहले issue ये था कि अगर कोई foreign university आना चाहते थे of a certain level, a lot of financial commitment was required. 50 crores आपको बैंक में, आपको इंडिया में डालने पड़ते थे, in a whatever fixed account or whatever, I don't know, just to show commitment. And of course, that used to also deter some of the universities to come along. Now there's a lot of change in the policy. They're saying that, look, fundamentally speaking, if you are of a certain genre, if you are of a certain kind of quality, you can come along. And what you have to remember here is that a lot of these universities may not necessarily want to come alone, because the ability to understand the Indian conditions, Indian market may be a little limited. So automatically they'll come along with the Indian establishments, maybe Indian corporates. ताकि वो एक joint venture के हिसाब से they might come into India in a more established format. I know that some of these very big universities have been on and off talking to Indian setups. They've been talking to, let's say, the people like the Reliances of the world, maybe people talking to, the other big, large corporates, right, on and off, to see whether, some kind of an establishment could possibly happen here, right? Of course, only time will tell who comes along. Kaun aata hai, kaun nahi aata hai.
And there was another, Vishal sir.
Anji.
There's another perspective, right? For example, if you look at the top universities, the top 20 universities in the world today, these are state universities, right? Like, for example, Washington State University, New York State Universities. Now, state universities, or ye students, please jara dhyan se suno, because you will try to, you need to understand what I'm talking about. है ना? ये समझो बहुत. State universities जो होती हैं, they are funded by taxpayers' money. Correct? So state universities are funded by taxpayers' money. So they do not have an incentive to expand. उनको कोई incentive नहीं expand करने का. Let's say a Delhi University is funded by taxpayers' money, ना? तो उनको क्या फर्क पड़ रहा है कि दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी को बोला जा रहा है कि तुम अफ्रीका चले जाओ, और there's a small country like बोत्सवाना, वहां जाके दिल्ली यूनिवर्सिटी का कैंपस खोल दो. So Delhi University does not have any incentive to go and open up a Delhi University in Botswana, right? So similar is the case with probably a state universities that are there. The bigger universities, the larger universities in US and Europe are state universities. So why would they, and in fact, there was a report which came that top 20 have not shown any interest in India's initiative. वो बोलते हैं कि हमें कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता, like why would we want to expand, हमें नहीं करना. वॉशिंगटन स्टेट यूनिवर्सिटी क्यों आके दिल्ली में या कोलकाता में सेंटर खोलेगी? इट्स अ क्वेश्चन मार्क, राइट? Not because of they don't have an intention, because they are funded by public money, so they don't want to take that onus. Like उतना adventurism नहीं है उनके अंदर, उतनी marketing skills नहीं है, they won't want to do it, ठीक है ना?
No, I agree.
I think,
no, I absolutely agree. I think it's quite possible that look, what you have to remember is when you're going international, you might adopt a different entry mode model, which could be related to a special purpose vehicle, which could be related to a joint venture, which could be related to somebody else making the investment. So if you look at a lot of universities that have entered China in the last 10 years, Nottingham or any of those kind of universities that they have entered China, it's usually been the local establishment, it's usually been the local government or the host government, the host business people, or a combination of the business people and the local government who have actually made the investment. Chahe wo land ho, chahe wo infrastructure cost ho, chahe jo bhi ho, right? And automatically, the branding, the know-how, a lot of that is from the foreign universities. I absolutely agree that some of the state universities, public universities, they may not necessarily, want to go all the way, make the effort. But there are a lot of very good, top 100 private universities in the world, right, which may want to see this as an option. But having said that, मेरे हिसाब से अगर आप COVID देखेंगे, the way online, influx हो रहा है, the way a lot of universities are are finding it quite tough to be able to ensure that they are providing face-to-face learning. वो वाला model by itself will make a lot of such universities want to change their approach. And maybe set up bases in different parts of the world. अभी ये लोग base set up करते हैं, but वो एक creamy layer वाला base होता है, which means आपको executive education set up कर दिया, right? आप notice करोगे University of Chicago का executive education है, उनके offices हैं, in India, for example. But it's usually the creamy layer. It's usually the the low risk side of things जहाँ पे आते हैं. Full-fledged universities बनाना, will take some time. But I think it's a matter of time. It's an effort from both sides.
One point and catch is there, like I was expecting in new education policy that government will make, in India right now, the education is not for profit. So I was just expecting the government in NEP to actually start a full-fledged, profit-making things in terms of education. So what do you think about that? Do you think this is also one of the major reason like why these universities are not interested in establishing their setup in the place like India?
I
Or
think
do
I
you
think
think that if
Darpan,
we will make education for that, because anyways the education even in the school, some of the private schools is even much more than what people generally pay for the higher education. So what do you think? Like, do we really need to step forward to make it a for profit making venture, the education is, and then put the tax that the way we pay tax on other establishments and the venture that government always charges?
yeah, Darpan, to basically answer that dilemma, right? I think the new education policy that the government has brought out, right, the national education policy, it basically is a framework as of now, right? And they haven't really thought about experimenting with it as of now. So I think over a period of time, when they see that there's a reluctance of private universities from outside, public universities from outside India are not coming, private universities say that कि भाई आप profit नहीं कमाने दोगे तो हमको नहीं आना है, and all those stuff. I think there would be small acts etc that would be passed to incorporate these changes. मुझे लगता है ये acts pass होंगे parliament में to allow these kind of things to happen, because what you're saying is absolutely correct कि जब तक एक foreign university does not get a an incentive, right, to go to a place, and I'm not willing to do charity, boss. Let's try to understand this. A private university does not have this setup कि I'm going to do charity, so I'm going to charge इतना minimum fees and all those things. मेरे को नहीं करना है charity, मुझे पैसे कमाने हैं. So in that particular case, I think there would be a difficulty in implementing this vision, I think. And there's another question that has come up very nicely for Vishal sir and Darpan and also myself. Rahul has asked a question that sir, foreign universities जब आ जाएंगे इंडिया में तो इंडियन यूनिवर्सिटीज का क्या होगा? So that's a very pertinent question, huh? कि इंडियन यूनिवर्सिटीज का क्या होगा? ठीक है. So I'll just give my opinion and then throw open this thing to Vishal and Darpan. देखो भाई, जब 1991 हुआ, लिबरलाइजेशन हुआ, है ना, तब बहुत सारे मल्टीनेशनल ब्रांड्स आए इंडिया में. ठीक है. ऑल द रेफ्रिजरेटर्स दैट यू आर सीइंग, ये सैमसंग, एलजी, ये सब पहले नहीं थे, राइट? ये धीरे धीरे करके इंडिया में आए. ठीक है. आप मारुति सुजुकी तो था बट Hyundai नहीं था, Hyundai आया, फोर्ड मोटर कंपनी आई, टोयोटा मोटर कंपनी आई, एंड ऑल दोस थिंग्स हैपेंड. सो मुझे लगता है सम इज गोइंग टू बी सिमिलर टू दैट, राइट? ऑब्वियसली द वीकर यूनिवर्सिटी सेटअप इन इंडिया, राइट, जो वीक यूनिवर्सिटीज हैं जिनकी बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग इंडस्ट्रियल लिंकेज नहीं है, जिनकी रिसर्च ओरिएंटेशन उतनी स्ट्रॉन्ग नहीं है, I think that those universities are going to face tough times. But that basically improves the quality of education in the existing system also.
Even I believe onto the same lines, like, if we have, for an example, in Delhi, there's a campus of Harvard and there's a campus of IIT Delhi or Delhi University. I'm sure in this kind of ecosystem, even the Indian university will work very, very hard to improve upon, and make their standards even much better. Because at the end of the day, we know that even our IITs and Delhi universities are no less than top universities of the world. That is what, and that is how we know these colleges and the universities. So I believe the competition will definitely go to increase the quality of education among the our institutions as well. And more than that, when the very, very optimistic targets that government of India has set for themselves, like every district there should be one multidisciplinary educational institute and research center. So I believe, like, it is only possible when these kind of best of the universities of the world are also be welcome into these places, and we'll be able to start more and more such centers of Indian education and theirs as well. One more question, Vishal sir, if you would like to add something to this.
No, so I think you're absolutely right. It'll take some time for the really good universities to get convinced. It'll require a lot of incentivization from this side, as in the Indian side. It could be private, it could be governmental, it could be a combination of incentivization to get them here. Because look, there's that other thought process that you go to a Harvard, you go to a Stanford, you go to an Oxford. Oxford doesn't necessarily come to you; you go to it. So fundamentally, that kind of an ethos, whether that will remain, or will there be changes brought about by COVID? If you notice through the online learning model, through a lot of, let's say, edutech, establishments, edutech companies who हम यहाँ काफी हद तक देख रहे हैं, much coming up in the last 2-3 years, and of course in the last 9 months also, they become really aggressive. A lot of universities have actually used that avenue from abroad to come and offer their degrees, or offer their certification, or offer their diplomas to Indian students, right? So automatically the market's already warmed up. Now it's more a question of whether somebody comes lock, stock and barrel, puri tarah aata hai, pura establishment karta hai, 10, 15, 20, 30 years ki commitment leke aata hai. That only time will tell.
Yeah. Sorry. So another point that I have here to start with the things is, actually, when you talk about the Constitution of India, the education is a matter of concurrent list, that it is a matter of state and center work in coordination. And as you know, there is a kind of tussle with the central government in the different states where the different party governments are working. So how do you think, will it be easy to implement these kind of policy, or will the state and the central government come in sync to implement that, or we'll see the farm bill kind of unnecessary protest into the thing without understanding the fundamentals and the basics?
So I think education obviously is a combined subject of sorts, just like COVID in a sense. It's COVID, the reaction to COVID, or what we do as terms of strategy, that also was. So yes, I think it will require the federal government or the central government to work along with the state governments. It becomes easier if the federal or the central government and the state government are the same or whatever, so that the ideology matches. But the fact is that education has become an important topic, for the electorate as well. Right. So if it has become an important topic for the electorate for whatever reasons, I think both the state and the center will definitely realize the importance of working together on this. But yes, you're right. A few years will go into creating an alignment. Wo thoda time lagega, but I'm sure it will happen, because fundamentally speaking, if it is important to you and me, and of course in bulk, as in not just you and me, but a large swaths of population, automatically then becomes an important subject for state and the center to work together on.
Right. I think Darpan, an important area that NEP is trying to touch upon is the 3-language formula, right? The 3-language formula for the school education system. In the primary schools, the education has to be provided in in basic English or Hindi, or a third regional language, right? Let's say for Kerala it could be Malayalam, right? So I think the central government is giving you enough flexibility to the state, right? That if you want to teach your curriculum in Malayalam, there's nothing wrong with it, right? So I think that flexibility is being given by the central government to the state government as far as the language part is concerned. However, with the state and center relations, which do not are not always very conducive, right? There might be a problem that certain states might not agree to this particular policy in totality. But I think overall, our politicians need to understand that for the development of a country as a whole, it is more important to bury the differences. Because if you keep on creating and flaring up the differences, the country as a whole does not develop, right? So it's not just that the Prime Minister Modi is trying to say that 2030 mein India yahan ho jayega. We all want it, isn't it, right? All the educated people who are sitting here and understanding, don't we want that Indian economy should be the 3rd largest economy by 2030? Hum chahte hain. We also want it. It's not just because Modi ji is saying it, because we also want it. If it's saying that India would be the third largest economy in the world by 2030, it is beneficial for all of us. It's not beneficial for, let's say, a BJP or a Telugu Desam or let's say RJD or this kind of a thing. सबके लिए beneficial है. ऐसा नहीं है कि per capita income बढ़ जाएगा, third largest economy हो जाएगी, global export बढ़ जाएगा, तो इसमें हमको किसी को नुकसान होने वाला है इस चीज का. I don't think. मतलब we have to, I think, evolve. मुझे लगता है हमारे politicians, they need to evolve and bury their differences, right?
I have related to that. Yes, of course, there will be an issue. I have one issue here in this when they guys are talking about the dissolving the UGC, AICT, etc., and forming one single organization to report to these university and implementation of the things, and that HECI will directly be reporting to the central government. So don't you think that will hamper the autonomy of these institutions? Vishal sir, if you throw some light on that.
So I think, yes, there's always that thing around autonomy. There's always that thing around, can we just have one particular Higher Education Commission of India, or whatever you want to call it? I guess that's what they're calling it, Higher Education Commission of India. Yeah, so there's always that possibility of a certain kind of an orientation, or let's say the bureaucracy, or the lack of flexibility. But if you notice the movement, light but tight kind of guidelines that are being created, right? Which means that a lot of self-transparency, self-reporting principles are being allowed to propagate. So, which means that agar NAC bhi dekh lein, right? When universities file for NAC and file for their ratings or whatever, or the NIRF or whatever else, I think there's a lot of focus on ensuring that the self-reporting is very transparent by the colleges, by the universities, by higher education establishments. So I think that has to keep on getting propagated very well. Of course, Higher Education Commission of India, they are looking at 3-4 different denominations. So they are creating verticals as well, whether that be for accreditation, whether that be for the grants. So the fact is, it's not as if the erstwhile AICTE or the erstwhile UGC is completely getting eliminated. It might be getting subsumed, or its responsibilities might be getting subsumed into an overall umbrella, Higher Education Commission of India. So I think yes, it's a gargantuan task, which is you're creating one particular establishment, but it's on the similar lines. And if you notice, in the UK they have the HEFKI, which is a higher education body and stuff like that. In the US you have one higher education body, and then they have various verticals. So I think the formula is not too different from that. Of course, in our kind of setup in our country, the variation, the subcultures, the the varied the very multi party kind of a system. A lot of these things will probably play a role in how this pans out. But at least we should give it a start. We should try and see how it actually works, from my perspective.
Okay,
yeah.
I have a point to add here, and this is very probably might sound very different. If you look at the involvement of the bureaucrats in running the current education system in India, I think it's very high. If you look at some of the universities, existing universities, right, a lot of bureaucrats who retire, right, who retire after 58, 60, 62, whatever, they become the registrars and the vice chancellors, etc., 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 right? So I think freeing the education system from bureaucracy is a very, very important step. Because now what happens is, the bureaucrats, especially if they have served their entire term into, let's say, an IAS, IRS kind of a thing, right? They develop very strong biases, you can say, or they have very strong opinions. And they are not very open to changes. They are not open to changes. So I think the first thing that probably the implementation phase of HECI is going to take is that, you need to free this from the bureaucratic clutches. Free HECI from bureaucratic clutches. You need to appoint educationists, you need to appoint people who have passion towards it. Probably you need to appoint MBAs, people who have done their MBA and they've worked in consultancy companies for 10 years. They can be part of HECI and that kind of a thing. You simply cannot let HECI go the UGC way. क्योंकि आप यदि UGC को देखो और AICTE को देखो, typically सारे के सारे retired bureaucrats ही fit होते थे उसमें. And that was the problem. That was the major problem, that UGC and AICTE were not able to function properly because all the appointments were happening from the ex, bureaucratic staff. सारे के सारे वही आ जाते थे. तो system breathe कैसे करेगा जब आप नया blood ही नहीं डालने देते हो? Getting it? So you need to infuse new blood into the system if you want it to, I would say, perform. Perform नहीं कर पाएगा यदि हम उसको bureaucratic setup में रखेंगे.
Okay, we have discussed on a lot many things, but two important points here we still missed out, and I think we should discuss, and that will definitely benefit students a lot. One important thing is when you talk about a common entrance exam, that they are talking about for UG and even for the postgraduate student. So Vishal, yeah, Vishal sir.
Anji, yeah, please go ahead.
So my question is that what are your views about the common, entrance exam for all the students, for all the universities?
Look, of course, it may be a step in the right direction, but of course, in terms of operationalization, in terms of management, in terms of how this will be implemented, assessed, in how many lots will it be, a lot of these things will become important for us to understand, right? Of course, what they call as parak, right? So this whole thing around the National Assessment Center is being called as parak, wherein you will have one standardized exam, which will also be overseeing the various boards that exist, in the country. So I think for this to work very well, yes, it's a good thought. If you look at the US, if you look at some other parts of the world, they have common standardized assessment systems. But I think in our country, because of the fragmented nature of how we've kind of developed, I guess we still don't know, how well this will do. We have so many different entrance examinations here and there. But I think it'll be important for us to understand, how this will work technology-wise, standardization-wise. I feel that first we'll have to reduce the variance across the various boards. We'll have to reduce, kind of have more standardized quality across the various, boards that exist in India. We already talk about the fact that, the various boards that are here, the UP board or the central board or any other board. There's always some level of variance, and there's always some level of differences as far as the output or the marks are concerned, which at times is obviously a problem. You would notice even at the MBA level, students who come from certain parts of the country, they always keep talking about, oh, this particular university or this particular setup hardly gives us any marks or whatever else. And of course, they get disadvantaged because of that. Whereas other parts of the country, they have more liberal marking systems. So of course, this will kind of maybe help in terms of standardizing or grading such particular students. But I think, in my opinion, it's a good thought, it's a good idea in terms of parak, but it's now more a question of how it will get implemented. I feel that we have to reduce the variance of quality across the various systems that exist in India. Only then we'll be able to ensure that a common entrance test is actually measuring equal stuff rather than actually throwing up complete inequality.
Another thing, while I was reading the entire draft, which is already available on Ministry of HRD side, they had said that there will be a common exam, but that will not be compulsory to the university. So right now, as we see, many universities are taking their own entrance exam that is generating a lot of revenue for them, etc. how exactly they have a plan to deal with it, if you know, and how they can actually, make sure that every university will take that common entrance exam score, etc.
So I think obviously this is in a way a SOP. You have to remember that various universities, colleges, they have various kinds of courses. And of course, because of which reason they feel that one particular kind of entrance is better than the other kind of entrance. So I think this is more transitionary, in my opinion. Right? If they hadn't done this right now, the middle path, then automatically I would imagine there would be more resistance to something like this. And of course, the various universities, the good universities, some of the more evolved setups will first want to see, bhaiya, ye jo aapne system koshish ki hai banane ki, how good is it? Right? Only then, once my trust in this particular parallel system that you're creating for the entire country, usme agar mera trust hai, usme agar loopholes nahi hai, usme quality test ho rahi hai, automatically I'll address it. So I think this is more like a middle ground, in my opinion, transition here, right? You can't, completely announce a system and say that, okay, this is the only system that will be followed, at least for the moment right now in the country. So I believe it's transitionally. The universities want to see what have you developed as a common system to then trust it, to then be able to use that as a mechanism for admissions.
Yeah, and I think more importantly, what are the metrics of that particular examination, right? For example, just we all know, like SAT in US has a specified syllabus, and all the universities are open to enter, to take that exam as an entrance criteria, right? But अब जो common entrance test की हम बात कर रहे हैं इंडिया में, what would it include? And does it make sense for a student to have mathematical skills if you want to pursue music or probably arts, or let's say English skills if you want to pursue, let's say, another subject like let's say Indian classical music or things like those. So जब तक एक common platform नहीं आएगा, the common platform on which universities agree, that this test is okay with us. So I think what Vishal said is making sense. It's going to be a evolution, right? It's going to be tested, then probably made some changes, again tested, changes. So a lot of iterations would need to be, done before you finally come out with a standardized test. And the standardized test, I think, this is another problem with a standardized test, Darpan sir. A student in probably Delhi, a schooling student, a person who's done his schooling from Delhi or Mumbai or Metropolis, right? Vis-a-vis a student who's done his schooling from a very obscure place in Orissa or Jharkhand, I think those would be not at the same level to take the test.
Right.
क्योंकि schooling में भी काफी अभी up and down बहुत ज्यादा रहेगा. So unless you provide an equitable platform, I don't think this would succeed. Matlab there's going to be a difference. There's going to be a difficulty. And since there's going to be a difficulty, there are bound to be reservations among the student community.
Even I believe the same thing, like it is a big policy and the framework needs to be implemented. It will take a decade at least to do that. And that is the reason, like the goals that they have set for themselves is 2030, 2035 and 2040. There are three different, points that the government is actually talking about. HRD Minister Ramesh Pokhriyal or Javadekar ji did the press conference onto that. Students, I would like to say one thing to you. Among all of this discussion, what we are doing, it is very, very important for you to go through Rajya Sabha TV, where a lot of debates are there. There is a YouTube channel where there's a very good debate on this, where Dr. K. Kasuri Rangan himself was there, with FICCI, Higher Education Director and Chairperson. So this kind of discussion, if you see, I'm sure that will open up your mind more about, understanding this new policy setup. And it is one of the things which is going to impact every single human being living in this country. So it is not like that a new education policy is not affecting you because आपका तो graduation 2 साल में हो जाएगा. आपका हो जाएगा. There's a future generation that you have to take care of. So it is very, very important. And that education system will directly impact the Indian economy in future. So you have to be very, very critically evaluate all the things which are there mentioned. And if you have time, I suggest you on Ministry of HRD site, complete draft is available there. You can download it that and you can quickly go through that, read it. लगभग 300 पेज का document.
दर्पण सर एक और सोर्स है आपको बताना था.
Yeah, and another very important thing I would like to tell you. इसके लिए I am very happy to say सौरभ सर जो आपको अभी स्क्रीन पे दिख रहे हैं, उन्होंने इतने अच्छे आपके सेशंस लिए. He has written a wonderful 55 essays in a book, and this book is available for you on Amazon. And when you see that book, 55 essays by Saurabh Jaiswal, you will find that. I suggest you, if this year you are going for an interview, all latest current topic of 2021 are there, right? For this complete cycle when people are going to do an MBA. So I suggest you make sure you go through those 55 essays. That will definitely open up your mind a lot, and we are definitely going to cover those topics, and then we will be able to discuss in much more details about that particular topic. So one last point I believe that is missed out in this discussion. We are talking about everything. We are talking about the student thing. We are talking about the infrastructure. What about the faculty infrastructure? What about the trainers into that system? Starting from the grade 0, अभी इंडियन एजुकेशन सिस्टम जो कहता है डायरेक्टली यहाँ पढ़ाई फर्स्ट क्लास से होती है. प्राइवेट स्कूल जरूर प्री प्रिपरेटरी क्लास लाइक LKG UKG हमें देते हैं. Otherwise, government schools में there is no concept of LKG UKG. Now they are saying that they will implement it for the student of 3 to 5 years. So first 5 years, they are saying first 5 years is about 3 + 2. So pre-prep and then class 1 and class 2. So do we have a trained people for that, and do we have a trained people for the higher education setup, the amount that we are talking about? Because we have to deal with over 15 lakh schools in India, over 1,000 good colleges and universities in India. So where government is planning to create that infrastructure? If you can throw some light on that. Vishal sir, if you can show us some way how this can be created.
Yeah, so essentially what they are revamping the B.Ed system. They're actually doing that. So right now it'll become important for people to do the 4 years B.Ed, to become effective teachers. At the same time, what they're also doing, so that's let's say, for example, to teach in higher level schools, secondary, or even in colleges for that matter. But I think what is also important for us to understand is that they're also making a lot of revamping of a lot of revamping is happening at the even at the basic level. Let's say, for example, why have they made it 5 + 3 + 3 + 4 is because earlier the government used to be more involved in your education from class 1 onwards, right? And that's when a lot of your applications started, a lot of activities, your math, your sums, your learning of geography, or whatever you want to call it, right? But what the government is now saying is, no, I think it's important for us to get involved even from the age 3, right? So you might do nothing at that age. You might be in Balvatikas or whatever you call them, or Anganwadis or whatever, right? But the fact is that the student needs to be focused on at that age. He or she might be having fun. He or she might be, doing a lot of games and stuff like that to go to school. But the belief is that if you don't start targeting from that age, retention becomes an issue. Students kind of leave. That becomes an issue. The students feel the drudge of an education. But if you start initiating them into fun and games and school and controlled environments, I think that's when the love for school actually goes up. But I think even for that level, they're looking at something called ECCE, which is they're trying to look at teachers or potential teachers, or even class 12 pass. They'll be getting a certain level of certification. They'll be trained much better so as to handle students better. So I think there are various things that they're actually doing. Obviously, revamping of the bachelors of education. They're also looking at constant trainings, constant assessments of faculty over a period of time, creating forums. Implementing forums wherein a lot of guidance and training can be provided. A lot of MOOC-based training is also being looked at. a lot of online-based, training, AI-based, analysis of needs for training of the faculty is also being looked at. So there's a lot of things on the anvil. There's a lot of things that they would like to do. Of course, the interesting thing will be how a lot of this will get implemented. I would imagine it'll take a long time, like you were saying, 2030, 2035, 2040, for this to happen. But at least there's a start to this.
Right, I think wonderful discussion that we had, and I'm really thankful to all the students for staying connected till this time. I'm just putting up a link where I think you should be able to watch something on YouTube. utu.be Darpan sir, बड़ा complicated link होता है ये
I will share it on the Telegram group, sir. You don't worry.
Okay.
I will share this right away on the Telegram group.
Okay. That would be great. That would be really great. Right. So I think the students, you had a wonderful time, and we are really thankful to Vishal from BM Munjal University, right, for sparing his Sunday, which is typically, kids and family day. So sparing an hour and a half on a Sunday, and probably the same amount of time preparing for this topic. And it's really appreciated, sir. And we look forward to more sessions from you. And thank you, Darpan, and all the students. Let's make it a happening Sunday today. Thank you.
Sir, one important thing. There is a question by the student. Student, एक मैं आपको important बात बता देता हूँ. Please don't go through the Facebook or the random social media pages to get your education and skill set done. Somebody was telling me like Whitehead Junior and teaching coding to the student, it is not good for them. Guys, it is absolutely a debatable topic, but see to China. In China, they have been training and teaching students the coding from the very early age. Please try and understand, when you talk about coding, on day one, they are not going to teach Java to any student. They are talking about working on their coding skills, right? So please try and understand that when they're talking about teaching you one language, when you see the future, like, we are talking about augmented reality, we are talking about artificial intelligence, we are talking about blockchain technology, we are talking about cryptocurrencies. Guys, when everything is going to come onto computer, it is very, very important that from class 6 onward, which is a decent age, 10 to 12 years, where you start learning these things, right? So incorporating that into the system technology, which is very, very important. I know there is a human angle to this, but they are not stopping you to play. They are involving even your sports grade into your education system and giving you that in your Digi locker kind of thing, where you will accommodate, your credit score. So just don't hear something like that, ki what will impact on the coding. Of course, debatable, but please try and understand. There are countries who have really done well, and China and India, if you read about 1945, 1950, we were almost the same kind of countries. And now see where exactly they have gone. Again, now there can be a debates and doubt onto that they are a communist country, they are a democratic country, and a lot of other issues. But what I'm trying to tell you, they're not imposing and forcing any such thing to that. But yes, please try and understand, in the competitive world, आपने भी कितनी मेहनत की होगी, IIT JEE का एग्जाम लिखा होगा, आपने कितनी मेहनत करके CAT का एग्जाम लिया, तो of course a little extra effort will make you more equipped with the thing. एक और पॉइंट मैं यहाँ पर क्लियर कर देता हूँ, उस पर कई लोगों ने डिबेट किया कि सर कैसे ये इंपोज कर सकते हैं हमें लोकल लैंग्वेज पढ़ने को, कैसे ये इंपोज कर सकते हैं कि हमें इंग्लिश ना पढ़े, इंग्लिश इज अ ग्लोबल लैंग्वेज. गाइस, द पर्पस इज डिफरेंट. व्हाट इज द पर्पस हियर इज दैट, क्या होता है, घर में जो एनवायरनमेंट होता है वो लोकल लैंग्वेज का होता है, मदर टंग का होता है. तो अगर कोई बात, क्योंकि आप मदर टंग में हो 6 साल तक, आपको वो ज्यादा अच्छे से पकड़ में आती है. अगर उसमें आपको कोई चीज समझाई जाएगी तो आपको जल्दी समझ में आएगी एज कंपेयर टू कोई आपको फॉरेन लैंग्वेज में समझाई जाए. तो लैंग्वेज का इंपोज करने का ये मतलब नहीं है. और ऐसे ही नहीं उठाया ये, मैंने कहा ना 1 लाख से ज्यादा सजेशन आए थे, इन्होंने ये यूरोप से पूरा कल्चर उठाया है. You go to the countries of Europe and you will find that they are not crazy about English. They love their own, language, because that makes the thing very relatable, right? Suppose in a family, where nobody knows the English and the child alone is talking about English, and child refuses to study because the mother is not speaking in English. Now what will happen, right? So right learning, school तो 6 घंटे का है, उसके बाद 18 घंटे तो घर पे है. तो उनका बस क्राइटेरिया ये है, एक ऐसी लैंग्वेज जो आसानी से उस उम्र के बच्चे को, कौन सी उम्र के बच्चे को, जो छोटा बच्चा है ना 6 साल तक का, 5 साल तक का, उसको वो जल्दी समझ में आएगा. दैट्स द ओनली थिंग, राइट? तो अपना ओपिनियन एज अ स्टूडेंट लेके आओ, अपने ओपिनियन को बायस्ड मत होने दो. तुम याद करो, मैंने तुम्हें पहली क्लास में कहा था, बायस से तुम्हारा काम नहीं चलेगा. तुम लोग वो हो जो इंडिया की जीडीपी को कुछ साल के बाद डायरेक्टली कंट्रीब्यूट करोगे, ग्लोबल लीडर्स बनोगे. तो तुम्हारे लिए किसी पर्टिकुलर सिस्टम, किसी पर्टिकुलर आइडियोलॉजी को पकड़ने की जरूरत नहीं है. तुम्हें बस इवैल्यूएट करना है, क्रिटिकली एनालाइज करना है, व्हाट इज राइट, व्हाट इज रॉन्ग एंड व्हाई. क्लियर? So just go ahead with that, and that's how I will end. Thank you so much, Vishal sir. Thank you so much, Saurabh sir.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, sir. Happy New Year to you too. Happy New Year, guys. Have fun. Take good care and stay safe. Stay home.